Awesome, guys. So from my side, the topic is very simple. We always talk about going from Amazon to outside of Amazon, but a lot of times we don't talk about how Shopify brands or D2C brands should actually jump on Amazon. This is a topic that I feel, especially in 2026, is being brought to my table multiple times. The reality is that not only things are getting tougher on Amazon, but also off Amazon. And a lot of brands that are not having a presence on Amazon 2026 are also having a difficult time. So the goal is just to give you a overall blueprint of what to consider, why you should be on Amazon, and what are some of the techniques that can make that transition as smooth as possible. So let me start with a brief introduction about myself before I go into the technicalities. So my name is Vincenzo Toscano, founder and CEO of Ecomcy. Ecomcy is a full service agency when it comes to Amazon, Walmart, and TikTok. To date, we have served over 1,000 brands, where right now we have a team of over 85 people in-house, where we do everything from A to Z. So PPC, DSP, listing optimization, everything under the sun when it comes to helping you succeed into these marketplaces. We actively manage a portfolio of 9 figures in revenue and over 8 figures in ad spend. So we have a lot of understanding what works and what doesn't work. And a lot of the things I'm going to be sharing today, to be honest, is through the learnings that on a daily basis we have figured out with all the brands that we have in house, especially those that actually are coming to us that are looking to succeed on Amazon when it comes to scaling the operation for them. Besides the company, I also do a lot of content myself. I'm an official Amazon educator. I have my own podcast called E-commerce Lab. So feel free to check it out, where I have a lot of people on a weekly basis where we go over, the latest strategies, what is working, what is not working. And hopefully the goal is to make it, as insightful as possible, to make sure that you know essentially what you need to do next to keep scaling your brand on Amazon. So let's dive into the topic, right? Which is essentially understanding why multi-channel is very important, especially in 2026, right? I think the most important thing is understanding first some figures to give you some context of what is happening. And the reality is, for all those of you that right now on this webinar today, that you might not be on Amazon, if you're not on Amazon, you're leaving a lot of money on the table. We're talking that right now on Amazon alone, we have over 300 million active customers. That these are potential customers that potentially they're not engaging directly to your D2C website, right? And more importantly, the intention to purchase that people encounter when they sell on Amazon, you will never find it outside of Amazon. We're talking that if you have a D2C site, in this case Shopify, conversions, if you're doing a very, very good job, is anywhere from 3 to 5%, compared to Amazon, that industry standard should be anywhere around 20%. So just by understanding how the intention is so much higher, you already picture essentially the blueprint of why you should be having an expansion into this marketplace. Because if you don't, the reality is, when somebody's going to go to Amazon, potentially a consumer is going to type your brand because they have seen you on social media, maybe retail location or anywhere else, and they don't see you, who do you think is going to get the sale? Most likely your competitor that is already on Amazon. So that's why Amazon is not only a vehicle that for amplifying your revenue, it's also for defending your revenue, because we see that a lot. Brands that become very resistant to be on Amazon, essentially over time what happens is that the brand that take the risk and the initiative to be on Amazon is going to start eating into your market share, right? So now when it comes to essentially comparing the Amazon plus Shopify, and what if require or not require, I think we need to start with some initial kind of benefits and the pros and the cons of each of them. The reality is, when you do D2C, which is why I love D2C, is that you own the consumer. That's the biggest win. That's something unfortunately on Amazon you will never have. We always have this sometimes hope that Amazon sometime in the future they're gonna give us more insights in terms of who our consumer are. But the reality is that you also have to understand Amazon's side of things. The Amazon gave you all the information away. The reality is, most likely people is then gonna go somewhere else, right? So they are protecting also their own kind of a unique selling proposition. But on the other side, Amazon is making it very easy for you to scale brands. We're talking that for most brands out there, the reality is the barrier of entry is never been lower, thanks to Amazon, because Amazon puts to you the traffic. It puts to you FBA that make it so easy to handle logistics, warehousing. It makes it so easy to handle everything in terms of advertising, which is, compared to Shopify, it's another animal altogether. You need to figure out 3Ps from day one. You need to understand ACO from day one, how to drive the traffic, how to master conversion, how to maintain the customer engagement with your website. So that's why every single time I talk to Shopify brands, that they're winning. I say, guys, you actually are the biggest winners here all the time compared to Amazon sellers, because I always see that Amazon sellers have it so much easier in the perspective of how much the tools that Amazon puts to your disposal that Shopify does. So that's why it's a no-brainer. If you're having a successful growth on Shopify, Amazon should definitely be the next step when it comes to expansion. Now, of course, something that we have to consider here is the cost of dependency, right? The reality is most of the brands that rely significantly on Amazon, that's a big risk. And we see that especially now, Amazon being more strict with documentation, with compliance and all of that. So Amazon can make it very easy, can make a lot of money, but can also be very painful. So it's important for you to be aware of this, because the goal is never to be a brand that depends solely on Amazon, but use Amazon as a channel. Like we have so many cases of brands that were doing so well, but then they get suspended and they don't have essentially a secondary channel to keep growing the brand. So see Amazon essentially as a powerful growth channel rather than the entire business. That is the only way for you to make revenue. Now, let's start with the foundation in terms of why you need to consider when it comes to scaling your brand on Amazon. Compared to everything that you know on Shopify, here I'm going to lay some foundations. Again, some of these, maybe you already heard of them, but the goal is to just make you understand very clearly what are some of the things that you need to have from day one to master your plan when it comes to Amazon. So the first one is keywords. Amazon still is a super keyword driven marketplace. However, if I'm honest with you, Amazon is transitioning more and more into more an audience based platform. What I mean by that is with technologies such as Amazon Marketing Cloud, we're seeing how they're investing a lot of resources to not only make you rely on keywords, but also give you the tools to essentially make you understand your consumer more than ever. So again, keywords still the foundation, but you need to understand how Amazon is going to shift in the future. And of course, out of keywords then derives the other things that you see in the screen, like having a good title, the bullet points and things like that. Things that on Shopify or your D2C is still important from an SEO perspective, but it's not as impactful as in Amazon, because on Amazon, for example, you might not have the right keyword in your title. That's going to completely not show you organically. That's not going to give you any kind of exposure, compared to Shopify that's more forgiving, because sometimes the SEO is more at the main page level or at the domain level, right? So this is very important to have as a comparison. Now, another thing is the fees, right? I also bring this because the reality is Amazon is much more expensive when it comes to fees compared to Shopify. So, for example, if you're comparing anything between Shopify and Amazon from apples to apple comparison, you on Amazon have something that you don't have in your website, D2C, which is the referral fees. So we're talking here is anywhere from 8 to 15%, depending on the category. Then you have FBA fees, and then you have PPC. Now, PPC advertising, you also will have that on your Shopify one way or another. Maybe not in the shape of direct PPC within the website itself, but you have to do meta ads, you have to do Google ads or email marketing. So you still will have that kind of cost, but the main kind of pain point that is very kind of impacting your profitability from day one on Amazon is referral fees and FBA fees. So be careful with that, because some brands we have seen that they are essentially a good fit for Shopify. Sometimes because of also dimensions and things like that might not be the good fit when it comes to Amazon. Now, there are things as well, before we start going to the technicalities of how to scale on Amazon, is also the logistics behind of it. A lot of the brands I talk with when it comes to D2C and Shopify jumping to Amazon, they are not aware of the two models. So a lot of you're going to have essentially two main ways of doing this, the FBA or the FBM. Now, most of you, of course, should go the FBA route, because that's the most kind of cost-effective way to hit the ground running and get prime batch and all of that. But for a lot of the brands, I mean, we work with some Shopify brands that do 50 million, 40 million. FBM already is a good fit because they have such a robust infrastructure of Amazon that they can compete with essentially the FBA fee. So it all comes down to your internal structure and what makes sense for you. Now, let's dive into the technicalities of how you will do this launch. And this is where I start getting a bit more technical, but this is important because especially for those coming from Shopify to Amazon, it's important that you understand the foundation of your advertising. So when it comes to Amazon, The thing that you have to understand first is that there's a couple of type of advertising within the platform itself, right? Within sponsor products, you have sponsor essentially keyword targeting, async targeting. Then you have sponsor brands that's more from a branding perspective, like video campaigns, banner campaigns. Then you have sponsor display that's more tailored toward retargeting and re-engaging people that has bought from you or based on audiences. Then you also have sponsor TV, but that usually is not the best fit for most brands. So ideally, you are left with three type of advertising when you launch your brand on Amazon. Now, the question always comes like, what is the order in which I should be doing things? So here I put a very kind of very summarized. By the way, this is much more technical, but just to give an introduction of what you should be doing. The goal is at the beginning, you want to first of all understand what the market thinks of your product and what are the keywords that Amazon potentially could find out of your baseline that you have with your listing optimization, which by the way, that defines how Amazon will potentially shows you through the automatic campaigns. So you launch your automatic campaigns, I would say max 2 to 3 weeks. You gather data, you see which keywords start to perform to start certain KPIs that make sense for you. And then the goal really scaling forward is pure manual campaigns. Automatic campaigns is something that should only be used during launching phase. After a month or so, or depending on the budget as well, because sometimes you need more than a month if your budget is very limited. But usually within a month or two, you should start transitioning purely into manual campaigns, because manual campaigns on Amazon is essentially what is going to make sure that your ads only show when somebody's looking for a specific keyword, right? Very similar for you guys that are coming from Shopify, you're doing Google Ads, right? You type a bidding on a specific keyword. The same foundation is on Amazon. Here, of course, you also have similar things such as exact, phrase, and broad. And then you have other ramifications of that, such as async targeting, which is targeting a product competitor. But again, without going too much into the technicalities, is understanding that certain similarities that you're having from Shopify, you're also going to have them on Amazon, right? So this is something that I always want to make very clear, because I know I have a lot of Shopify brands that they have also experience with things such as eBay. For example, eBay doesn't give you any flexibility when it comes to advertising, or Etsy, right? Or Mercado Libre, for example, in Latam, that's a very big marketplace. So understand that Amazon gives you all these tools, and if you know how to master from day one, it can be very impactful for your growth on Amazon. Now, the other thing when it comes to Amazon, the reality is all down to reviews. That's the reality. So another thing you have to figure out is how to get your initial reviews from day one. There's Amazon buying program. And then of course, the other thing that I would recommend is to have some kind of follow-up after the product is bought, but of course, all within terms and condition. But the goal is understanding that just as in your website, you might have a certification, badges, awards, and things like that. Amazon is the same, but with reviews. So you need to find a way to generate that trust. And again, if you already have a very good momentum on Shopify, it shouldn't be difficult for you to get that momentum on Amazon pretty fast, especially if you already have branded search term, right? So make sure from day one that's your priority, because the thing is, if you advertise on Amazon and you don't have any reviews, you're gonna have a very tough journey to really convert and scale forward. Now, another thing that I recommend everybody coming from Shopify. Again, this is an introduction for those that might not be aware of. You need to make sure your brand is protected. The reason is very simple. When you have your brand protected, you get access to tools that you wouldn't have otherwise. Things such as removing counterfeit, getting access to premium content, having a brand store. For example, a branded store is very powerful for those that have that a brand game very kind of optimized, because allows you to essentially have a website where you already have the understanding of how to maximize that, but within Amazon now. So understand that, and then of course, make sure from day one as well that before you go into full scale when it comes to Amazon, you also do a research of what is being happening on Amazon before you launch on Amazon. We see a lot of times that because you were too focused on your D2C and you're doing very well, then when we jump to Amazon, there's already people selling your brand or creating products on your behalf that you didn't know, or distributors. So it's very important that you clean the house before you take full control. Otherwise, you could end up in situations where you don't have full control of the catalog, and that can be very detrimental in the long term when it comes to optimizing and things like that. Now, when it comes to integration, this is something I wanted to also bring to the table, because here is a bit where we start jumping more into technicalities. Like I would recommend for most of you when you're jumping essentially from Shopify to Amazon. Shopify has a lot of tools that essentially allow you to integrate Shopify with Amazon. There's even official tools from Amazon itself. Now, if you don't have, it depends also on the volume, to be honest with you. That's why I give you all the options in here. If you don't have a lot of volume to your Shopify, and Amazon is just part of your launch altogether, this could also be done manually on Amazon itself, right? The reality is, when I recommend to do the full integration from Shopify to Amazon, is brands that we have that have 500 SKUs, 1,000 SKUs plus, and at that point, it doesn't make sense for us to create every single SKU manually on Amazon. So we just connect Shopify to Amazon, bring the initial baseline skeleton of your Shopify account, and then on top of that, then we manually optimize images, copy and everything for the Amazon set of things, and then launch all the advertising from there. Now, the other thing is very important is pricing. This is something that is very difficult for people coming from Shopify. So I just want to make a quick pause in here. Pricing is heavily triggered by what you do outside of Amazon. So, for example, if you're a Shopify brand, right, that you're doing constantly promotion outside of Amazon, and then you jump to Amazon, right, and you don't essentially have a price that's consistent. I'm going to give you an example. We have a brand that they are very powerful on Shopify because they constantly play with promotion, 20% off, 10% off, buy two, get one for free, things like that. Amazon was a total nightmare for them because they were never able to essentially fix their buy box situation. Because when your pricing fluctuates that much on Shopify or D2C, Amazon tends to give you a very hard time with your buy box. So make sure before you jump to Amazon, you understand the economics of everything being sent so far, your referral fees, promotion fees, and advertising fees, and make sure that that's essentially fully integrated into a price band that you can play, and you essentially are not going to be in a situation that you cannot change pricing because effectively you cannot, it cannot map with what you're doing off Amazon. So that's something very important to keep in mind for all the Shopify brands looking to expand on Amazon. Now, when it comes to driving traffic, right? Something I always say is usually the conversation is bringing in this case from Shopify to Amazon, but the reality is that you want to create a full loop effect, right? That's where most brands actually end up having the best outcome in terms of scale. And here's where you have to be very, very clever how you achieve that. There's many ways of doing this. The first one is, for most brands that are very powerful on D2C that jump on Amazon, we make sure that all the post-purchase engagement through Amazon has to some extent bringing the person within a branding effect. So for example, claiming any kind of feature, discount, a club access, anything that has to be done only to the website. So that means that even if the client found you through Amazon in the first instance, they have to go to your website to claim some kind of promotion. That's the first one. The second one is essentially through your brand store. That's why I mentioned at the beginning how brand race is super important for D2C brands. The reason why you're successful outside of Amazon is because you crack the real game of branding. Otherwise, you're just another commodity like most, unfortunately, sellers on Amazon. So if you know how to transmit the branding and what makes you unique, what a better way to actually replicate it on Amazon as well. So make sure you leverage brand store. The beauty of brand store is that not only is a landing page within Amazon itself, but it gives you a ton of analytics on the back end. You can also run ads directly to your brand store. And if you're very, very smart when it comes to the brand store, you can upsell, cross-sell, and create essentially a whole brand loop effect that most brands on Amazon, I can guarantee you they're not having. And then from there, of course, there's other elements. You have also Amazon Creator Connection, Amazon Post, and things along those lines. So make sure you leverage all the branding tools within Amazon, because that's the only way when you jump from Shopify to Amazon to be perceived as a real brand rather than another product on Amazon and just a commodity that's going to be competing on price, right? Now, let's start jumping to kind of the advanced side of things of jumping, in this case, from Shopify to Amazon. So the first thing is, when you're leveraging your data, right? Some of the things that you're going to maximize the most is what you're already having, in this case, outside of Amazon. So a lot of you, when you come outside of Amazon, you already have reviews, you have Q&A, you have a different pieces of content outside of Amazon. And what you have to do is you need to use that to generate a customer insight. Why? because essentially on Amazon, as I was already briefly discussing, now with the technology of things such as Amazon Marketing Cloud, is easier than ever now to actually find your consumer on Amazon. So, for example, if you already know from your Shopify website that people who buy your products, a female between 20 and 40, they usually like a pet, they have pets, they like a specific TV show, they have specific lifestyle, all those things that you should know actually if you have a D2C website, because that's how you then do properly Google Ads and Meta. That information now can be replicated on Amazon. And that's what we're seeing a lot of Shopify brands killing it on Amazon, because the reality is the other way around usually doesn't happen. Most people selling on Amazon, they're still essentially post into the era of keywords, but they don't really know who is the persona behind that keyword. So if you have that information, you jump into Amazon, trust me, you have so much more advantage than most people on Amazon. And that's why you should use as your Kickstarter, essentially your catapult into fueling your success on Amazon. And the other thing as well that I want to bring to a table to now start concluding, I guess, high level the strategy is the opportunity that also Amazon gives you to test new products. Why? When you have a D2C website, right? And you, let's say you want to launch a new product, you want to launch a new bundle, it's so much more expensive. Why? Because most likely you need to launch a bunch of new creatives, you need to split test your Meta and Google Ads campaigns from your existing audiences. It's much more labor intensive and usually doesn't tend to be as profitable as, for example, on Amazon. It can be as simple as, for example, as adding an extra color to an existing listing, right? But because Amazon is heavily focused on organic exposure and what you've been doing with PPC, now your momentum of testing a product and your time to failure is so much faster. So a lot of the Shopify brands we work with, actually we use Amazon as our lab. Our cheapest products that we want to test, we test it on Amazon. A new color, a new bundle, because the reality is Amazon now has created such a good space for testing that essentially now we can test any product that we want, any bundle that we want, any color that we want, any shape that we want, and within a month we will know if it's successful, and then we can replicate that on our website and essentially be more cost effective. So also think of Amazon not only as a way for you to increase your revenue, but as a way for you to actually learn more about your consumer, especially consumer that will never find you otherwise, to expand your product offering. And the other thing I love about Amazon is international expansion. I'm super vocal about this. Like even myself, I'm always doing keynotes worldwide when it comes to this. Amazon is the only, and I can guarantee this, Amazon is the only way to expand globally, cost effective, and also in terms of time. You're not gonna find other way of doing it. Try to do this on your own through figuring out 3PL, compliance, logistics. I mean, a lot of things to some extent you have to do on Amazon as well, but Amazon give you the launch pad. Amazon is telling you, let's say you're a US brand, you want to expand to Spain. If you had to do that to your D2C, you had to figure out the audiences, the content, and all of that, compared to Amazon Spain, that's simple, localizing the listing, the content, start launching your PPC, and people already in Spain is looking to buy that product. So it's a completely different game, and that's something that you have to perceive as well. If you're a brand that in D2C and you're stuck in the US and you don't know how to go global, Amazon can be the perfect bridge for you to essentially break that kind of barrier, you know? And then the final thing to start concluding is understanding another important thing, which is the visuals on Amazon. Another thing is when you bring your content from Shopify to Amazon, another big mistake I see is that on Amazon, most of the time, people don't tailor their content to Amazon. So they might do the brand store, they might do the A plus content, but they don't necessarily customize this to what Amazon wants to see, especially with Rufus, right? We're seeing Rufus, for those that don't know, especially with those coming from D2C, is the AI shopper that Amazon has put in place for connecting consumer to the potential product. And we're seeing how important now is to have certain infographics, certain elements, and things like that on your images. So it's very important that if you're playing the Amazon game, you master these two things that you see on the screen, because that's really what is going to maximize the exposure that you get on the platform. And finally, to start bringing all this full circle, is essentially the flywheel when it comes to Amazon to Shopify, right? I think Amazon, you have to see as your accelerator for brand discovery. you're never gonna find any other way to actually get discovery at a faster pace than anywhere else. I mean, the fastest now that we're seeing is actually also TikTok. TikTok is very good for discovery as well. So if you combine, for example, Amazon with TikTok, and then everything you're doing on D2C, that's the perfect kind of ecosystem that you want to reach. Because while some of them focus on generating the leads, then on your website, which is you can call it as your hub, your headquarters, is where people can experience the full brand experience. They maybe can buy products that they cannot buy on Amazon or they cannot buy on TikTok. And then you can have the full data ownership. And then from there, you can increase the lifetime value of your consumer and the profitability of your brand. But it's very important, guys, that you start mixing the exposure that you get, because if you get all in stock on D2C, and I say all the time, over time your competition is going to steal the branded terms that most likely you're having on Amazon and other platforms, and that's going to be a matter of time before that's also start affecting your D2C side, right? I guess it's the next step to give you with a plan of action. And again, this is very high level. There's many technicalities, but this was meant more to explain for all those D2C brands that are joining us today why Amazon is the place to be. First of all, you need to understand your presence on Amazon. So see if somebody else is selling, if somebody is your distributor reselling your products, make sure you have a strong baseline. Once you have that strong baseline, make sure that you then optimize your listings across content, across copy. Everything already went through high level on this presentation. Finally, define integration. You want to figure out if you're going to do FBA or if you're going to do FBM, how you can be as optimal as possible, depending on your scale. And the final thing is understanding pricing, right? Pricing is super important. Finding a pricing that makes sense for Shopify, pricing that makes sense for your Amazon, and then bringing all this full integration in terms of making sure that when somebody buys you on Amazon, they have to go to Shopify to claim certain things, and then from Shopify they might need to go back to Amazon, and you create this full brand effect. That's what really is going to allow you to consolidate your market share control. So that's everything from me, guys. Thank you so much. Of course, if you want to have a deeper conversation, especially all those Shopify or D2C brands are in here about how Amazon can be the perfect fit, it's kind of the QR code here on the screen where we can have a deeper conversation about how we can make this happen. So that's everything from me. Any questions, drop them below in the chat. And then, of course, what we're going to do, as I mentioned, towards the end of the webinar, we can answer them one by one. So I think next now we have then Jason. Yeah. Thank you. I think you're muted.
Yeah. Thank you, Vincenzo. I'm not going to do a training deck. I think Vincenzo covered a lot of territory there. Awesome job. I think for anybody considering this path, you're 100% right. I think you were saying it, but I'll just double down on it that there is no either or anymore. We have brands that are trying to decide how much to invest in D2C versus Amazon versus Walmart now, which is a whole different subject. And I think the answer is hybrid, right? So the 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 way that I think about it is similar to you in that I think of it very much about buckets, right? So what are the things that can drive you to be successful? I think you covered most of them. I'll just recap and then I'll kind of get into it a little bit more and add a couple of things. Um, Pricing is super important. You got into it a little bit. You didn't really talk a lot about Shopify, but Shopify is creating for many brands more trouble than good when it comes to pricing and products showing up on marketplaces like Amazon or eBay that were captured at a very low price on TikTok as an accelerant. So it's something to really pay attention to. There's a lot of I think there's an undercurrent happening across the internet right now because of the monitoring and the wars that are going on around monitoring price and this even for third party sellers. It used to just be that first party sellers on Amazon would get their price sort of their listing suppressed by Amazon if Amazon couldn't realize a profit. Now Amazon just turns off your ability to market your product and suppresses your buy box, which makes it pretty hard to grow your business. So I think I just want to reiterate the importance of price. The the other part of it, I think I really agree with you is on controlling your brand. Maybe the biggest reason to go to Amazon if you have a strong D2C presence or a growing D2C presence is your products are probably there already. There are I don't know what the latest count is. Maybe you guys do 3.5 million sellers, maybe more now.
Yeah.
And they're on TikTok. They're looking for products that are hot. They're trying to grab it on deal. And one of their favorite tricks, actually, which might surprise you, is to buy your products and sell them for more on Amazon,
Mm-hmm.
which doesn't sound like it should be an issue. If you are like, well, they'll just find me on my website. Well, they're not going to find you on your website, and they're going
Yeah.
to think, why is this product so expensive? So that it's not always that the price is lower. Really understanding your distribution, having a strong distribution plan, a pricing strategy, like you said, Vincenzo, super important. But being able to monitor your price at any given time in all the places that it's sold, you mentioned Mercado Libre, a growing problem
Yeah.
in certain parts of the world for price matching. So something to really, I think, pay attention to. Um, One of the things that I don't think I saw in the consideration of FBA is returns. Um,
That's right.
you're likely to get a higher return rate on Amazon than you are in Shopify just because people are just trained
Taking
to send
advantage.
stuff back, right? Um, there was about 2 years ago, there was I don't know if you guys, I'm obviously the old guy here, but this all started when Amazon bought diapers.com. No, no, no.
Mm-hmm.
Zappos. Zappos was the first brand outside of like LL Bean and retail to do free returns. And it started this whole shift where, one of my early brands was a backpack brand, and people would buy all 3 or 4 colors that they were
Mm-hmm.
considering and send 3 back. And I couldn't make any money, right? So there's a sort of an undercurrent now of trying to sort of right the ship there. Amazon's starting to have, they make it harder for you to just return something because you feel like it. There's customer service engagement opportunities there. I don't know if you've ever tested those
Mm-hmm.
out, you guys, but the there's tools provided by Amazon. There's some third-party tools as well, which you can stand up in front of this return thing and reduce your return rate. When you're talking about margin, that's a super important thing to consider. They also do stuff like, oh, well, we just sent them a new one for free. Sorry, right? So paying attention to all the small, long tail of fees is also important. So anyway, something to think about there. Um,
Okay.
I also want to double click on a comment made about reviews and ratings.
Mm-hmm.
Um, this is being recorded, so I'll be very careful. Being terms of service aligned is very important for garnering reviews. The general review rate on Amazon is about 1 to 2%. So if you're trying to get reviews, you need you need to move probably 1,000 products. You want to. It used to be like, oh, if you have 10 or 15 reviews, you're
Yeah.
good. You really need probably 50 or 100 ideally now. Um, and the sooner you can accelerate your review score and your review count, the better your media will perform, the higher your conversion rate will be, and then that kind of spins the flywheel of organic rank, which is the key to all of your success. So I would add that piece of it. I do think, and I'm gonna set you up, David, uh, when it comes to what your tool does because I love it. And Content's king on Amazon right now, and it's changing a lot. So we pay a lot of attention to AI. I do personally, and I do in some of my businesses. You mentioned Rufus and Cosmo, Vincenzo. I'm not convinced that keywords matter as much anymore. If you look at the stats, if you guys don't know about Rufus, and if you haven't read about Cosmo, Cosmo is the back end of the algorithm of Amazon that feeds Rufus, which is the app that's mostly available on the mobile app for Amazon now, but it's coming everywhere, and ads are starting to show up in Rufus as well. You can't control them yet, but they will be soon. So it's paramount to understand how Amazon's Cosmo is feeding Rufus. And one thing that I would add to um, the structure you outlined, Vincenzo, is Q&A. So if you have a Shopify site, you have a treasure trove of information of feedback from your customers and questions they've answered. Make sure that you're filling out Q&A for all of your products. You can add comparison charts. I think you mentioned that
Mm-hmm.
in your A plus on your brand store. It's moving. Generally speaking, the biggest shift is moving from keyword to context or intent. So think about the way you would shop if you were asking a question instead of searching for a product. You need to work backwards to that. And I think you'll hear from David. He probably has ways in AI to do that in imagery. One of my business partners back in our agency world, he launched products you guys have probably heard of, Echo Dot, Fire TV. He likes to say Fire Phone, but probably nobody here even knows what that is. I just heard it's coming back, by the way. Anyway, the they did a lot of, like, Amazon invested a huge amount of money to study behavior of people sitting in front of a screen. And I actually tested this back in the day when I had my own products. The only thing that matters is the title and the first three images, and the bullets don't matter at all. Okay, if you don't get them there, they're not going to read. So what is happening in AI is you're able to, do a lot of the things that you were talking about, Vincenzo, to test your products, to test the content, and to do it in a way that's more efficient and faster and cheaper. And I think, thinking about how to do that in an efficient fiscal way and a time way is super important. I like to say the only constant at Amazon is change. So it's changing faster than ever right now. And having a system, if you're really adept at Shopify, it's not wildly different to go to Amazon, but the tools are probably different, right? So I don't know what, we work with a lot of companies that try and, how do I say this? Media is a big deal. Amazon is trying really hard to improve the offerings that they have within the ad console, and they're still a solid, B minus. If you have technical acumen, there are a lot of ad tools out there. You can message me separately. I'm happy to send you some. There's, the big guys like PackView and Sky. You don't have to spend the fees that they have. I've been looking at a lot of other tools like SellerMate, and there's another one, just Xnerda's pretty good. A little bit more expensive than something like SellerMate. There's a whole bunch out there I'm happy to share information about. I think Vincenzo really was accurate in saying don't rely on the automated solution that Amazon provides you. Leverage it as a sort of a research tool to do a better job. And there are, I like the audience part of what was discussed. I think for anybody that's just getting started, stick to the basics to start and scale carefully. You can really, really burn cash in media. And I think outside of like returns and bad conversion, media can really hurt. We launch a lot of brands, and the one thing that I think people don't understand is, I think you mentioned the long game in your deck. It's going to take a while. Like having an ad cost of sales in the 10 to 15% range, that's total dilution, not direct on your ads, is a really good target. You got to make sure you have that margin, and then you have to decide what's your tolerance for pain. Do you want to grow fast? And if you do, you're going to have to invest in what we would call growth marketing, which are terms of service aligned seeding and influencer campaigns to boost your review score that we talked about a minute ago, and maybe lose money or just break even on your media investment. And then over time, you'll start to create efficiency. Other brands may say, like, I want to be on Amazon. It's not my main place to be. I will take my time and focus on making sure, like you said, Vincenzo, there aren't other people selling my products. I know where the stuff is coming from. It's not quite as easy as you made it sound, I think, to get rid of unauthorized sellers that have their hands on your products. Again, I'm not going to do a big I2O retail pitch, but that's the core business that I2O has, where we monitor our sellers across all platforms. We track price. We can tell who moved first. We capture things like where they're buying it from. They actually send us invoices, which is super important when you're trying to figure out where the leaks are and plug them. And for people that don't have the bandwidth or not adept, we file brand registry tickets for counterfeit or trademark, which is important. If you don't have a trademark, life on Amazon is hard. You kind of glossed over that a little and saying like, oh, you should have this. But if you don't have a brand store, it's hard. If you don't have enhanced content or you can't do all the ad placements, like you can't do a sponsored ad, sponsored brand ad without a registered brand, which requires a trademark, it's difficult. So that's something to think about. If you're going to try and go to Amazon, register your brand first, even if you have to wait 4 or 5 months. Sometimes you can sneak in with a trademark registration application, not an actual trademark number, but it's harder. So again, I think it's important to be on Amazon. It is getting more expensive. It's funny. I came up like on the Amazon side, and I'm actually sort of the opposite of this conversation, which is brands are trying to figure out, you know, should I be spending more time going to D2C? And for all the things that Vincenzo laid out, it sounds amazing. Like, oh, I get more margin. Oh, I get to see my customer data. It's hard to find your customers. He's 100% right. People are already there on Amazon in droves. And I think you mentioned in one of your tools, Helium 10.
Yeah.
It's a very affordable tool. It is sort of one of the old school tools of Amazon. And if you're considering going to Amazon, maybe the most important thing you can do is ask yourself this question: is my product differentiated? Do I have a right to win? If you can't answer those questions, I would say hold off. I just literally had a meeting with somebody yesterday that's like, oh, I have the world's greatest Bluetooth speaker. I actually politely said, I don't want to help you. There's no room left in Bluetooth speakers, and unless you found like the greatest innovation in Bluetooth, there's a brand. If you guys, I'm not going to bore you too much. Look up WIM. It's the only brand I've seen in the last 4 years that's innovated in consumer electronics, for speaker technology and design and price. Like they hit all of those things. If you have a reasonable stance to say my product's better, it's cheaper, it's cooler, then absolutely you should go to Amazon. If you're selling vitamin C serum, just you go to Helium 10, you'll see that there's 50 brands there that have 10,000 plus reviews, and it's much harder, right? So that would be something that I would really think long and hard about. And I'm not kidding, and I know this is a Shopify to Amazon conversation, but Walmart is no joke anymore. They're finally gaining what I would consider to be real traction. So a little less scary competition. I had hoped that they were going to go sort of zag from Amazon and do stuff differently. I think there's a bunch of former Amazonians there that have helped them understand how much money they can make, and it's not necessarily better from a cost perspective. It's better right now. I think they're going to follow Amazon, but it's definitely something worth looking at. So anyway, that's my insights. I think I can show you a deck, but I'm not really a deck person. Just again, if you're interested in understanding how to control your price, we at I2O, we predominantly work with sort of mid-sized brands and up, but I'm going to date myself a bit. Nobody here has ever heard of something called Magic Jack. It's like a thing you used to plug into your computer to turn it into a phone. They had one SKU, and their lost buy box was 80%. And they paid $3,000 a month to us for 5 years for one SKU because we got their buy box to 95%, and it paid for itself 100 times over. So I don't want to say it's not a good fit. If you have pricing trouble and distribution trouble, and you want to go to Amazon and you want to know where the problems are, I'm happy to help in any way I can.
So, love it, Jason. So thank you so much for the insights. I think the definitely speak from experience. So that's great. I appreciate that. And of course, anybody that has any question about what Jason just mentioned or any of the resources, I also make sure then after the webinar to put them in the description for the replay so people can find them. Yeah. So thank you for that, Jason. Yeah. Awesome. So next we have David.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. Wow. That's been amazing so far. To have your wit, Vincenzo, across, a little bit of everything, and then to have Jason go deep on some very strategic things was great to see so far. I want to take a bit of a different direction actually, and go in a bit more in an interactive way, specifically on the listing side. Because I know we have pricing involved, I know we have strategic planning involved, I know we have inventory involved. But at the end of the day, as Jason mentioned, your product needs to be different, but it also needs to look the part. And when you come from a platform like Shopify, or where you own your customers, um, you typically don't have the same level of competition from a visual, from a branding point of view, from an SEO point of view. We also have Rufus. So I want to walk us through some of these areas. So I want to share my screen. I've got some slides, but I want to jump in as soon as possible into kind of walking you guys through what an example, a real example, how to take a listing from Shopify and make it good for Amazon. These are some of the misconceptions people have when they want to go to Amazon. They think they need a big team, new listing content, which you do, but a completely different strategy and a completely different separate model, operating model. But a lot of the things that you have on Shopify are going to be definitely useful here as well. Can you guys see my screen okay?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Awesome. Here are some of the things that are very important to take from Amazon, from Shopify. Firstly, you know which products are going to do best based on your Shopify list, and those are the products we should definitely focus on. You also hopefully got some data like Vincenzo mentioned, and you should ideally know who your customer archetype is, if they're female, male, age, and so on. And these are the things you can use later down the line on Amazon as well. And another thing that you're hopefully going to have is some images. Now, I took one of these guys. I took a Shopify store, and this is a small Shopify store. Your images might look the same. They might look slightly better. They might look slightly worse. But I want to walk you guys through the steps I would take, and you should take, if you want to make this listing actually sell on Amazon. Because if you take these images, you take this title, and you take this bullet points and you put it on Amazon, no matter how amazing the product is, and Jason might argue, but no matter how amazing the product is, it's probably not going to sell. It's most likely not going to sell. Because if we search for organic face flannels, this is what it is, it's a cotton face flannel on Amazon, you're going to see your competition on Amazon, and it's going to be very tough competition. So this is one of the competitors on Amazon, and what you should do is actually look up your product on Amazon and see what the competition looks like. So you can see that this is one of the best competitors, but their images are not all that great. They've got some okay images, but they're not that special overall. Maybe they're a 6 or a 7. You should then go scroll down, and this is something that Shopify doesn't have. You can't add it, but this is standard on Amazon nowadays. You can't go without. There's a from the brand section, which is actually the brand, the brand, not the brand identity, the brand story on Amazon. And you also have a product description, which is what we call on Amazon the premium A+ content. So you can see they have a cross-selling module here where they add a couple more products. Then they have a video, half video a module, and then they have different images here. And you can see again, these are better than nothing, but they're not all that great, right? And this is one of the best competitors. There are, as Vincenzo mentioned earlier and Jason mentioned earlier, there are 4 main areas that you need, and 4 metrics that you need to focus on and make sure you get right on Amazon. It's not really optional to get these wrong anymore. And those areas are the Rufus optimization. And Rufus, as Vincenzo and Jason mentioned, is basically the Amazon AI. And the way it works is by asking questions, like Jason mentioned. And what you want to do is make sure you answer the top 25, at least the top 25 most common questions about your product. So this is an audit, and I'll tell you guys about this and how you can access this later. But I took this Shopify listing. This is not on Amazon. I put it in our tool. It's free, and I'll walk you guys through it. But I put it in our tool, and they analyze the listing at the moment to be at a level of 11 out of 100, and the projected score after optimization will be up in the 90s. And if we look at the Rufus section, Rufus is one of the most important areas to optimize now, because it's really about 40, especially in the US, about 40% of sales are coming from people who use Rufus. You can see here we have the top 25 questions. So what our AI does is it checks the listing and it comes up with the top 25 questions, and it suggests where it should be, where those questions should be answered. So for example, what are the dimensions of the flannel should be answered in the title and in the bullet points. How many flannels are included should be in the title and the bullet points. And you can see that our AI analyzed this Shopify page, and it analyzed the title and the bullet points, and none of these questions are answered in either of them. So you can see out of the top 25 questions, 8% of them are answered correctly, 36% of the questions are answered partially, and there's 56% in gaps. So the AI analyzes the text, but it also analyzes these images. Because on Shopify, it's okay to just have plain images like this. I wouldn't say these images are okay, but having images like this on a plain background is common and normal on Shopify. On Amazon, this is not the case. As Jason mentioned, people don't really read the title or the bullet points on Amazon. They're going to go straight to the images, and they're going to want their questions answered in these images, right? And this is where we need to speak to customers. So all of these images, every single image needs to have a purpose and answer a question. And you can see here, I actually ran this in our tool. I took this from Shopify. I imported it in our app. And these are the images the app created. You can see it's answering questions. It's saying natural softness, sustainable care, biodegradable, right? And then you've got double-sided, antibacterial, eco-friendly. So this first question is answering all of these questions that Rufus needs to answer. So this is the Rufus section, and you want to answer questions in the images, in the title, and the bullet points in the premium A+ content. We also analyze here the search engine optimization. This is the second section, which is very important. And this has got everything to do with keywords. So you can see here we've analyzed their top 30 keywords. And out of their top 30 keywords, none of them are actually included in the title or bullet points. So if you were a Shopify seller and you took your Shopify listing and put it on Amazon, it's very unlikely, unless optimized, to really get any traction in terms of traffic and then to convert. Because you want to get the traffic through Rufus optimization and SEO. That's how you get people on your listing. And then you want to get them to click with the main image, right? So if I go here, if someone searches for organic face flannel, your main converting factor here, or your main click-through rate factor, is your image. So you want to have a very good looking image. These guys actually have a very nice image. I would rate this a 9. And then you want to have very good images that are going to convert. So you want to get traffic, clicks, and conversions. Those are the three main KPIs you want to focus on when it comes to Amazon. And then the next area we analyze the click-through rate, and you can see we rated this 15 out of 90. Really, the main factor here is the first part of the title. If we look on the search page, you've got the first 80 characters, and then you've got the main image. Those are the two main factors you can optimize and improve. And then you've got the conversion rate. And the conversion rate, there's a lot of areas. Reviews are important, price is important. These are things that are a bit harder to change or control or optimize. But your images are really the most important on the conversion rate side. and your brand story and premium A+ content, which are down here. So now that I walked you guys through this, has anyone got any questions about anything that I just mentioned in terms of Rufus, click-through rate, conversion rate, and SEO, before I move on to what you can do right now?
I think most likely it's gonna be some towards the end, but so far it's looked right. Yeah.
That's awesome. So what can you do right now? Well, as Vincenzo mentioned and Jason mentioned, you really need to audit and understand what's going on Amazon. What does your competition look like on Amazon? So I've created a practical 30-day launch plan. You want to audit, then you want to create the listing in terms of the text, the title, the bullet points, the backend keywords. You want to create your images, and then you want to publish, and then you want to optimize. So just to give you a quick overview of what's possible right now, if you go to @selluna.ai/audit, so if you go to this link here, you can just take your Shopify. If you've already launched on Amazon, you can take your Amazon URL, you can paste it in here and run this completely for free. You don't need to log in or anything. And you can actually see on a area by area how you're doing right now and how you could be doing in terms of performance. And then if you want, you've got about 15 to 20 free images that you can generate with Selluna just to try out and see what it does for your product. You don't have to pay anything or do anything, but you can see the images it created are better, in my opinion, than one of the biggest competitors there is on Amazon, right? And this is what you want to do. You're coming on Amazon on a new platform. You want to be the best. You want to have the best Rufus, the best SEO, the best main image, the best product images, the best premium plus content. And you can come in here. You can simply add your product, add your brand. You can also create, when you sign up, you get to create your own brand identity. So it doesn't just create images based off what it thinks your brand is. It actually creates a brand identity for you, and then it generates based off that brand identity. And then you can create main images, premium plus content. It also does the title, bullet points, and backend keywords for you based on Rufus, based on SEO. And one of the most important areas that people on Shopify don't really know about is this premium A+ content that you can also create here. So it creates all the images for you. It creates the headline, the title, the body text. And you can just go ahead, try it out, see what it does for you. But audit and then see what you can do and what you can achieve, and then optimize, publish. And in terms of the optimization loop on imagery, there's multiple areas you can optimize and A/B test. One of the biggest areas you need to A/B test for sure is the main image, because the main image, for example, these guys have their 6 cloths here stacked in a pyramid, and then the box on the background. The reason they added the box is to make the product look as big as possible and to add a bit of contrast, because these are white, right? If we had white on white, it doesn't look as appealing, and you're going to get less clicks. But the reality is that nobody knows the best main image for you. You need to do 2, 3, 4 A/B tests for your main image and see what works. And then for the product images and premium plus content, it gets a bit more difficult to A/B test because the data is a bit more inconclusive, because there's a lot of variables. It's not just product images that are going to affect your conversion rate. But I suggest you start with the main image. Make sure that the product images look good, but also very importantly, answer questions. And you want to answer, the top, ideally 5 to 10 questions people have. You want to have them in your top 5 questions here. And then make sure your Rufus optimized and search engine optimized. Otherwise, even if you have a great product, it's going to be very hard to get any traction or sales on Amazon. That's it from me, guys. Thanks a lot. And remember, if you want a free audit or a free trial.
Thank you, David. That's awesome. Cool. So I guess now we start diving into Q&A. I actually have a couple of questions myself, but I'm gonna give also us ask you a couple of questions for both of you, for the audience to ask questions. So I guess my first question would be to you, David, regarding Rufus. Like, there's a lot of debate in the space when it comes to Rufus in terms of actually impacting or not discoverability and all of that. Like, what are you seeing with, or people using the tool and everything? Like, do you actually find the product being discovered more before and after, increasing impressions and sales? Is there some high level kind of case studies you have seen before and after Rufus optimization?
Yes, for sure, for sure. It's very difficult to tell whether it's Rufus that
Yeah.
impacted impressions or whether it's SEO, because when we do optimization, we do both at the same time, so it's very difficult. But we have we've done multiple case studies, and I've spoken to users that have used the app, and some of them have mentioned numbers like 50% increase in total sales. So that's conversions, impressions, everything, all metrics combined within the first week of actually A/B testing with our images compared to their old images and their old title and bullet points. In terms of Rufus optimization, I'm certain that it is important. If you had a product with one sentence bullet points and title, um, with no text on the images and barely any images, I can guarantee you that you are not going to show up on Rufus as you were if you had answered those questions. Uh, because if you've only got short sentences, the only ideas that Rufus is going to have is maybe from your reviews. But if you're just launching, you don't even have reviews either, so it literally has nothing on you. If you look at the AI models like ChatGPT and all these AI models, they all work based on, and they're biased on data. Um, when they're going to answer your question, they're going to answer it based on, the documentation it has off the internet, and it's going to answer off that. It's not going to come up with its own ideas. Likewise, if there's no documentation on your listing, you can't expect it to know anything about it, really.
Hey,
Yeah.
David, I have a follow-up question or maybe clarification. It's my understanding that product descriptions, which used to kind of be a throwaway, even if you have A plus, are being crawled by Rufus or Cosmo. Is that what you're seeing as well?
I believe so. I believe so. Any text really that you're going to add in there, they're going to use.
So that's just for people that are listening. I think that's an important thing to think about, if because imagery wise, A plus is better than no A plus, but you can still
Yeah, yeah.
fill out the product description, and it will. You mentioned back in keywords, back in search terms, that kind of stuff, super important. But I've because of the context you can stick in the character limit of a product description, it represents a really good opportunity.
Big.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's big.
We're seeing the same as well, actually, from our side. Like, that's why I asked you the question. Like, we had clients that came to us and they had already some significant traffic organically, but these are brands that were relying significantly on sponsor ads and the organic ranking that they already had, but the images didn't have necessarily a lot of infographics or text or anything. They just had good images and good branding. And just by adding sentences from Q&A and insight from reviews and everything, we did see a lift without necessarily changing the PPC much or anything. It just because adding more kind of insights within the images, and now most likely Roof is picking that up and thinking, oh, this product now is this water bottle is meant for hiking, because before there was no mention about hiking, but now you have a picture that mention about how this water bottle is meant for hiking because of how impact resistant it is in the text, right? So we are seeing those things on some of the brands. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Cool.
For sure.
Another thing, and maybe this question go back to you, Jason, in terms of Amazon. Like, uh, you mentioned on the audiences side of things that you, of course, you're more kind of focused into the foundation and everything. So I'm keen. What is your take on things such as Amazon Marketing Cloud? Like, are you a big believer of that? Are you seeing more and more brands using it? Or you think people should still focus on the traditional sponsor product keyword campaigns and that's it?
Again, I think it depends on how much investment you're making. Generally speaking, um, There are some audience tools, keep me honest here, I think that are working their way into paid search too. It's not just DSP. So like brand promotions, things like that, um, and that are worth it. The the general thing that we've seen is that you should increase your ad spend until you see diminishing returns,
Mm-hmm.
and you need to obviously pay attention to how much you invest on branded versus unbranded spend. People tend to cheat and just buy all. They're like
Mm-hmm.
super afraid that someone's going to conquest them. Um, so that's why having a decent ad tool will help you understand that stuff and visualize it. Um, as you increase your spend, then I think it makes a lot more sense to be looking at leveraging AMC. Um, and and I would say equal to that, some categories, the paid search uh, cost per click is getting so high that you can start to make the case that it's just better straight up to be spending on DSP. That was never the case 5 years ago,
That's
or
true.
even really
Yeah.
3 years ago. So I think it's a kind of a case by case basis.
Yeah, that's actually such an interesting thing. We're seeing the same. I think is like because of the bad fame that DSP won over the years. Like back 2 3 years ago, everybody was getting super burned with DSP because you didn't have Amazon Marketing Cloud. Couldn't really track what DSP was doing. A bunch of overlap. Most people was only doing retargeting, which you can do with sponsor display, and people were just burning money left and right. And the minimums were so much higher. And I feel like as a result of that, so many people pull out of DSP, which in a lot of audiences is a blue ocean. Like only a handful of people doing DSP, and I agree. Like the audiences are so much cheaper because people now have this cheap. Oh, DSP doesn't work, which it does. It's just that they didn't understand it. They didn't know how to do it. You know.
Yeah, you got to watch a little bit on the attribution. It's broader for DSP than it is on paid search, so you just got to be a little careful um, on that side of it. But I do think in highly competitive areas, we do. I mentioned Bluetooth speakers. We do a lot of CE and
Mm-hmm.
headphones, things like that. Very competitive. Now, Bose and Sony and some of those guys are also investing heavily in DSP, but there are opportunities there when you get really focused on price bands and, like you said, customer profile, where I think you can do pretty well.
Cool. Awesome. So I guess to conclude, if we gonna leave our audience with one advice for, it could be topic related or it could be uh, you know anything related. I guess moving to Q2 and the remainder of the year, what will that be? I guess we go back to you, David, and then we close with Jason and myself. Yeah.
Um, I would say specifically on topic for Shopify, I would say really go for it. Um, I would definitely say go for it. Go on Amazon, see how it does. If you're in above your head and you don't really know what you're doing, speak to someone like Vincenzo, because I mean, even like you mentioned, Jason, the vitamin C serum, you can make it work. You can still make these types of products work, depending on your profitability, on your profit margin. You can definitely make these more mass products work. But you do need help. You probably will need help for these types of products, but go for it.
Cool. Jason.
I want to say one thing I didn't say about like a Selluna type product that you should, just from a content perspective, then I'll give you my last thought. Um, Doing content is no longer a one-time deal. One of the benefits of AI is to continue to optimize your content. So you should have a plan to sort of quarterly or twice a year leverage a tool that has AI that can do that for you
Mm-hmm.
efficiently. That's how fast stuff is changing. So I just put that out there. Um, I guess my thought I'd leave people with is have a plan and try to stick to it. It can be demoralizing sometimes, or the and when I say stick to it, I don't mean like don't change your plan, but have a north star that you're willing to go towards, and understand you're going to have to be flexible, but you have to keep driving to that plan. I agree with you, David. Go for it, but really understand like where are you in a risk profile. Do you want to go hard and fast, or do you want to just be there and control your brand? As I said before, that's a really important demarcation. We ask people this all the time when we first engage with them. You know, how hard do
Yeah.
you want to win? Right? How much does it matter to you?
Yeah, and I think from my side to conclude, I will say to complement all of that is make sure you don't get distracted by the shiny objects. Especially in today's age with so much AI and all of that, there's so many things that they're pitching you of making you think that it's gonna completely change your business overnight. I can guarantee you haven't seen that really happening. So stick to your foundation, stick to what is working. Of course, omnichannel is something you must do, but not at the expense of killing your fortress, right? I see that with even Amazon brands. A lot of Amazon brands I work with, they went all like crazy to TikTok. They pull money out of Amazon, they put it on TikTok, and they realized TikTok is not the shiny object and that people were saying that it was gonna be, right? So you need to be careful, do it in phases, step by step, but don't see it as a plug and play kind of thing all in, because a lot of these things are very, especially some of these marketplaces such as TikTok, are still in kind of experimental phase to some extent. You need to stick to what actually has been working so far, which could be your D2C or Amazon, right? So yeah, that's everything from me, guys. It's been a pleasure to have you all in here. Of course, we're gonna then be sharing this recording with all of you, and for those that couldn't make it or had to leave before, don't worry, we're gonna make sure we can give it a full recording back to you. All the details, all the resources, everything gonna be then also be sent to you, and it's gonna be shared down below when the stream it goes live. And other than that, it's been a pleasure. Hopefully, you learned a lot out of this. It gave you a lot of insights and a lot of first-hand experiences with some of the speakers that we had today on the webinar. And from my side, Jason, David, pleasure to have you here, and hopefully, I see you soon in the next one. Yeah, thank you so much for being
Thanks
here.
so much.
Likewise, lovely to meet you guys.
All
All the best.
right.
All the best.
Yeah, bye bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.